Seth was born on October 10, 2006 in Iowa, a bright child with simple joys. Among his treasures were Elmo's blanket, a pacifier, and his fascination with fire trucks. He loved nothing more than playing alongside his older brother Sean. Their mother Michelle was the center of their small world. On Sunday, October 26, 2008, she took her two boys on a drive. At just 2 years old, Seth was still fragile, while Sean at 7 was protective. Michelle drove them to Jessup, Iowa, stopping around 12:30 p.m. at a convenience store to ask for directions to a park. A store clerk mentioned a couple of local parks, but Michelle chose to take the children elsewhere to a different park. In a calculated move, she dropped her cell phone and left it behind. Next, she drove to a quiet, secluded spot near Littleton, Iowa, just miles from the park. There, by a pond in the early afternoon, she parked and told the boys she needed to step out of the van. Michelle opened the rear hatch. With chilling precision, she used duct tape to cover her son's eyes, then slit both their necks with a hunting knife. She staged the scene to suggest someone had tried to help, leaving a note claiming a strange man was responsible. Then she inflicted wounds upon herself and slipped into unconsciousness, only to awaken the following day. She stumbled to a nearby home seeking help, telling the woman who answered that a man had attacked her and her children. The woman immediately called for emergency assistance on October 27th. When police and medical teams arrived, Michelle was airlifted to the University of Iowa hospitals, while officers discovered the van beside the pond. Sean, though injured, was still alive inside the van. He told first responders that his mother had taken him into the woods and cut him. He pushed her away and she left him alone. Sean recounted hearing his brother in distress before passing out. When he awoke, he returned to the van and hid. He also revealed that his mother had covered his eyes with duct tape. Agents from the Iowa Department of Criminal Investigations first encountered Michelle at 10 a.m. on October 27th. This was before she underwent surgery. Michelle was intubated and unable to speak. She indicated she could write her responses using hand gestures to communicate this. In writing, she claimed a man had attacked them hiding in the back of the van in Jessup. She described seeing him in her rearview mirror after leaving the playground. This man had gestured for her to turn east. Michelle said she tried to use pepper spray to escape, but the man overpowered her, bound her, and then injured her children. After regaining consciousness, she attempted to aid the boys with a first aid kit. The attacker returned, slashing her with a knife, causing her to lose consciousness once more. She also informed police that she had tried to write a note about the incident found on yellow paper inside the van. The initial police interaction lasted about 3 minutes before Michelle was taken into surgery. The following day, at approximately 11:30 a.m., police returned to speak with her. Agent Calloway and a fellow agent entered Michelle's hospital room for a formal interview. She lay semi-upright in bed, connected to numerous machines and medical devices. The agents consulted medical staff to confirm whether medication or injuries would impede her ability to communicate. Medical personnel assured them there were no such barriers. Still unable to speak, Michelle was again asked to write her answers. Agent Calloway began by assuring her that she could stop the questioning at any time. Michelle inquired about the well-being of her children, but the agent withheld any immediate response. During the interview, a nurse entered to administer care. The agents left the room for 10 minutes before returning. Upon their return, Michelle resumed writing without prompting, continuing her detailed account of the incident. She wrote that when Aunt Colleen visited Sean, said she was trying to help, attempting to stop bleeding, turning his head, applying pressure despite his swollen lips, cradling both boys. Agent Calloway interpreted this as an explanation for why Sean had accused his mother. Seizing the moment, Agent Calloway and his team stepped outside to strategize how to confront Michelle with evidence that contradicted her story. Returning to the room, Calloway informed Michelle that discrepancies remained between her statements and the crime scene findings, prompting further questions. Michelle responded, simply asking how she could assist. The agent pressed her with specific inquiries about her earlier claims. He revealed that Sean was alive and recovering. Calloway then shared a story from his time as a state trooper, recounting a tragic traffic incident where a father's negligence caused his child's death, subtly drawing parallels to the case at hand. After a tense exchange, Agent Chris revealed to Michelle that her account conflicted sharply with the oldest son's testimony, casting doubt on her narrative. Cornered by the inconsistencies, Michelle ultimately confessed to the horrific acts she had committed. Before delving deeper into this case, brace yourself for the chilling story of Gerald Bordelon, one of the most depraved individuals ever encountered in this line of work. Michelle revealed chilling details. She had slit her oldest son's throat, first citing his age, and left the youngest confined inside the vehicle, promising to return for him. When questioned about the duct tape found at the scene, Michelle admitted to purchasing it months earlier and disclosed the exact location of the purchase. It became clear she had meticulously planned this crime when pressed. If the duct tape was bought specifically for this purpose, she coldly acknowledged it, expressing a sickening sense of awareness. She also confessed that the note left in the van blaming an unknown attacker was part of a calculated deception. The note had originally been composed a month earlier, and then rewritten on the morning of the crime to lend credibility to her fabricated story. Michelle faced charges of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and child endangerment resulting in serious injury. Seeking an advantage, she filed to move her trial out of Buchanan County, citing concerns over impartiality. On September 18, 2009, a pool of 55 potential jurors was sworn in and subjected to a detailed questionnaire as part of the jury selection process in Buchanan County. From their responses, 14 were dismissed outright by the court. Further interviews revealed that nearly half of the prospective jurors held such strong preconceived notions about the case they could not render an unbiased verdict. The court also acknowledged the intense pre-trial media coverage in the area, which undoubtedly swayed public opinion. Consequently, Michelle's motion for a change of venue was granted. The trial unfolded across several days in October and November 2009, this time in Grundy County. Michelle did not deny her role in slitting her children's throats. She chose not to testify, but 2 expert witnesses offered their opinions on her mental state at the time of the crime. Both experts agreed that while Michelle understood the nature of her actions, she was unable to distinguish right from wrong during the attack. They highlighted her disturbing belief that death would spare her children from future mental health struggles, and the shame of having her as a mother. Michelle also held on to the notion that her young children would ascend to heaven, granting them eternal peace. However, the prosecution's expert countered this, asserting Michelle was not legally insane, pointing to her deliberate efforts to conceal her identity and her continued fabrications after the crime. The jury ultimately found Michelle guilty on all counts, sentencing her to life imprisonment. It was a senseless act, planning this for months, then carrying it out with a knife while claiming insanity. The motive remained elusive. Sean, the surviving son, endured unimaginable trauma. One can only hope he is finding some measure of peace. Now shifting focus, I bring you the dark tale of Gerald Bordelon, an utterly despicable man. Our story begins on November 7, 2002, when Gerald narrowly escaped death by electrocution while repairing the electrical box of a trailer his estranged wife Jennifer had rented at Highland Village Mobile Home Park. Gerald and Jennifer had met online in 2000, married in 2001, and relocated from Louisiana to Mississippi, bringing Jennifer's children, including Courtney LeBlanc, the eventual victim. They resided in a trailer on land owned by Gerald's parents. The marriage crumbled after Jennifer discovered during the Christmas holidays that Gerald had inappropriately touched Courtney and her sisters, a revelation that marked Gerald as a truly vile individual. Jennifer promptly alerted Mississippi Child Protection Services, leading to Gerald's removal from the residence. Despite the separation, Gerald and Jennifer kept in contact after she returned to Louisiana, moving first to Donaldsonville, then to Denham Springs, where she rented the Highland Village trailer. Though the trailer's exterior seemed intact, Jennifer described its interior as a complete wreck. In response, Gerald began repairing various aspects of the trailer, including electrical wiring, which ultimately led to his electrocution accident. A neighbor recounted hearing a loud pop and then spotting Gerald collapsed outside his trailer. Courtney, who had been assisting him that day, frantically called her mother at work before dialing 911, summoning emergency responders. Paramedics revived Gerald and transported him to the hospital for further care. Yet against medical advice, he discharged himself shortly after and went to stay with his sister, Cindy Landry. Just a week later, on the morning of November 15, 2002, Courtney vanished from the trailer on Linda Road, never to be seen alive again. The day before, Courtney had accompanied her mother to Baton Rouge's Lake Hospital, where Jennifer's brother was critically injured in a traffic accident. Jennifer stayed overnight at the hospital, while Courtney insisted on returning to the trailer alone, despite never having spent a night by herself before. A friend drove Courtney back to the trailer, and the two remained in phone contact multiple times that evening as Courtney insisted she could manage on her own. The following afternoon, Jennifer returned from the hospital to find Courtney missing. Authorities were initially informed that Courtney might have run away. This was plausible, as she had previously run away with the daughter of Cindy Landry, where Jennifer had stayed for a week after returning to Louisiana. The investigation into Courtney's disappearance took a dramatic turn when FBI agents arrived on the scene. These agents were already in the area, assisting with a major probe into a series of brutal serial killings terrorizing Baton Rouge and its neighboring parishes. Their mission was clear: to determine whether Courtney's vanishing was linked to the notorious Derek Todd Lee case. It soon became evident that this was a separate case involving an entirely different suspect. Throughout the investigation, law enforcement repeatedly interviewed Gerald, probing for answers. An FBI agent forwarded a detailed questionnaire Gerald had completed to the Bureau's Behavioral Analysis Unit for evaluation. The profile that emerged shifted the agent's focus squarely onto Gerald as a person of interest. On the night of November 22, 2002, surveillance officers tailed Gerald as he crossed state lines into Mississippi. There, he visited a graveyard near his parents' property under the cover of darkness. Shortly after the trail went cold, officers lost sight of him in the shadows. At the time, Gerald was on parole. His trip to the graveyard violated the terms of that parole, a fact the officers were keenly aware of. Yet they made a deliberate choice not to detain him. They feared that any premature arrest could compromise the delicate investigation into Courtney's disappearance. 4 years later, in November 2006, FBI agent Glenn Methvin summoned Gerald to the police department for questioning. Gerald arrived alone, driving his own car, a vehicle that would later be seized and examined after his arrest. That afternoon, agents arranged for Jennifer Courtney's mother and Gerald's sister Cindy to confront him at the station, following a carefully crafted script from the FBI. In a chilling ploy, Jennifer and Cindy each told Gerald separately that the entire situation was a setup. They warned that if he wished to remain part of the family, he had to reveal what he knew about Courtney's disappearance. Once the women left, Gerald entered a tense meeting with the FBI agents. He requested to speak with Cindy once more. After that conversation, he promised to lead the agents to critical evidence. Authorities placed Gerald under arrest for the parole violation and transported him to Cindy's home. There, from the back seat of a patrol car, he spoke with his sister through the open window. After roughly 20 minutes, Cindy leaned inside the vehicle and embraced her brother, then directed the officers to the chilling location where Courtney's body lay concealed in dense brush along the banks of the Amite River, just minutes from her home. To reach the scene, officers crossed the Amite River and circled back to its west bank within East Baton Rouge Parish. The discovery was harrowing. 12-year-old Courtney was found wearing only a pair of shorts and a single tennis shoe. Nearby investigators uncovered a T-shirt partially buried in a tire track carved into the muddy access road leading to the riverbank. Further afield, some 400 feet away from the body, a pair of red panties clung to a cluster of weeds. Though not found at the scene, a large knife with a green handle later entered the investigation. This weapon was handed over by Michael Cuccinelli, who stumbled upon it while fishing in the area 2 days after the body was discovered. Initially, he picked up the knife for practical reasons, intending to use it for cutting bait. But upon learning of the grim discovery on the riverbank, he returned the knife to the officers investigating the crime scene. Days later, Cuccinelli accompanied police to retrace his steps, pinpointing the exact water-filled pothole where he had found the knife on the muddy access road. Though the pothole was only 50 feet from where Courtney's body was found, the thick underbrush had kept it hidden from sight. Jennifer later identified the recovered knife as belonging to a set she kept in the kitchen of her trailer. As the trial neared its end, the prosecution suggested that Gerald had not been fully truthful about the circumstances of Courtney's abduction. A criminalist testified that evidence pointed to a second assault occurring inside the car, either through penetration, explaining seminal fluid found in Courtney's cervix, or through a forced act where the perpetrator ejaculated into her mouth and she spat the fluid onto the vehicle's transmission hump. The defense contested Gerald's timeline, arguing that if he was mistaken about the date when Courtney's body was left in the river, then his entire confession should be viewed with suspicion. Called by the defense, Carl Kretzner, a former sheriff's lieutenant, acknowledged that the pathologist's report indicated a post-mortem interval of just 3 to 5 days. This timeline suggested Courtney died well after the date, Gerald claimed. Kretzner personally interviewed Gerald to clarify the 2-week period Courtney had been missing, aiming to verify the accuracy of Gerald's account. Ultimately, Kretzner accepted Gerald's timeline over the coroner's findings as the more accurate sequence of events surrounding the murder. However, the mystery of the red panties remained unresolved. Given the harsh, cold, wet, and windy conditions at the time, Kretzner testified, the panties could have been present for only a day or two, but no longer. In fact, when Jim Churchman from the police crime lab tried to photograph the panties at the scene, they fell from the weeds, underscoring their precarious placement. Some critics speculated that Gerald, who had spent the night of November 23rd at the Budget Inn just a quarter mile from the body, might have returned to the scene and dropped the panties then. The defense called witnesses to paint a troubling picture of Jennifer. After an electrical accident nearly costing Gerald his life, she appeared hysterical, but during Courtney's disappearance she seemed unnaturally calm. Witnesses testified that Courtney often acted fearful around her mother. One witness, Gerald's niece, recounted a chilling incident where Jennifer grabbed Courtney by the throat and choked her during a dispute over laundry. The autopsy revealed a chilling detail: acetone was detected in the victim's bloodstream. The defense argued this could have resulted from the starvation endured during the 4 mysterious days when she was missing, but a critical inconsistency emerged. Gerald had confessed with knowledge too detailed to be innocent. He described the crime with specifics only someone involved could know. Defense counsel pointed out a telling slip. Gerald referred to the underwear at the scene as boxers, not panties. Such a mistake, they argued, was unlikely unless he was repeating information fed to him. Information that could only have come from Jennifer. In a startling testimony, Jennifer admitted her daughter sometimes wore blue or burgundy boxers to bed. This led counsel to propose that the crime scene had been staged deliberately. Jennifer allegedly guided Gerald to the location by marking it with red panties, serving as a crimson beacon for him to find. Despite the tangled web of theories, the jury remained unconvinced by the defense's narrative. Gerald was condemned to death. The sentence was carried out on January 7, 2010. One investigator remarked on past cases where someone claimed love as a motive to take the blame. But in this instance, such sentiment was dismissed with scorn. No mercy was given to what they called a dirty rat. As Gerald returned alone to the trailer and saw the girl, something primal took hold of him. Whatever that impulse was, he could not resist. In the end, there was consensus the death penalty was deemed the just outcome. Now the question remains, what is your verdict on this harrowing case?